Good evening, everybody. Greg Hauser, North Carolina Emergency Management. Dan, RATPAC, JM, thank you guys for the invite to present in front of this group. I really appreciate the opportunity. Hope to share our experience. Obviously, by the title slide, you understand what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about North Carolina's first responder communications, or ESF2's, response to Hurricane Helene, and focusing on amateur radio for that. Just to kind of to toss it out there, um, what we're trying to take a snapshot in time of September 25th to November 6th. But I did hear a question when I just joined. How's the recovery going? There's a lot to be done still, and there will be a lot to do still. So um, so I appreciate it. We're going to get going. I've got 36 slides. This will not take long because I want to jump into some questions and answers and things like that, and hope we can share our experience. So, for those of you that have jumped on a Rat Pack session that I've done before, I'm really proud of my call. W3FIE, original W3FIE is James Stone out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That is my grandfather-in-law. And when I met my girlfriend at the time, now wife, she said, "Oh, you're one of those radio guys. Great. My grandfather was a big amateur radio guy in Elmer for many people in Philadelphia. So, and she said, I always remembered he was in the basement. He would say CQ, CQ, W3FIE. So I never met him. Unfortunately, he passed. But when I got my ticket, my mother-in-law gifted me W3FIE. So it's super, super cool, and I'm honored to do it. So, judging by my story about W3FIE, I'm very passionate about amateur radio operators here in North Carolina. I take it very seriously. And to kind of lead the way, amateur radio and the ICS position Oxcom are just as much a part of our team in North Carolina as Swiftwater Rescue comms, urban search and rescue specialists, commercial telecoms, et cetera, et cetera. So level playing field. Want to throw a disclaimer out. This presentation that I'm going to give you guys, or this discussion we're going to talk through, this is our lessons learned from our experience during Hurricane Helene. All right. This is just my perspective. So we'll talk about what my role is here in North Carolina. And um, we're going to get into some stuff. I tried not to put a lot of pictures. I don't like showing pictures of devastation. I think it's, um, I just don't like it. All right. So um, I know there are people from North Carolina, specifically Western North Carolina, on this call tonight. My intent is not to show any disrespect for you in what you experienced in your part of North Carolina. And also, we got to remember this storm affected Florida, Georgia, Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Tennessee. There are a lot of people still hurting. All right. So I just want to make sure we're keeping that in the forefront as we make this discussion tonight, and we go about this stuff. Okay, so just some statistics to kind of level set the playing field. 106 people lost their lives in North Carolina. That's of this month. Kind of goes unnoticed. There were 3 line of duty deaths during this event. Firefighter Tony Garrison of Garin Creek Fire Department, Captain Michelle Quintero of Madison County Sheriff's Office, and then Deputy Jim Lau of Macon County Sheriff's Office. So I want to make sure we're giving them the due that they need and they deserve as they carried out their life-saving missions. We requested and mobilized resources from 39 states, 3 U.S. territories, and 2 international partners. So we basically had a calling all cars event in North Carolina. The title of this is "Expect the Unimaginable," and we're going to get into kind of how we go about leaning forward for these types of events. But we the the term "expect the unexpected," we kind of threw that out the window. This was kind of unimaginable for us, and we just kind of did what we could as we went along, and I'll kind of share some of those things as we go. We had 422 documented missions assigned to ESF2. That is just under in our team, and we had 15 documented air sorties. So a huge airlift element for this due to all of the roads being destroyed. So Air to ground comms, huge. We have a couple of subject matter experts that are aces when it comes to air to ground. But I say 15 documented because there were one sortie flown that went to 6 or 7 places with one strike team. So a lot going on there, but it was mind boggling. This is kind of disturbing. Over 176,000 buildings damaged or destroyed. That's a really heavy lift for our citizens. Over 1,700 miles of fiber optic cable destroyed. And then 22 counties experienced significant impacts to communications networks, 4 of which were catastrophic. And that's Madison, Yancey, Mitchell, Buncombe. And when I say catastrophic, um, almost of the public's ability to use a communications network was destroyed and unavailable. So that's a really scary place to be. Um, but as we know, as you guys know, and for those that took part in it, um, our public safety LMR network stayed up, amateur radio worked, stayed up, some other things that we use on a daily basis did work. So that's a good thing. Just what we're going to talk about. Unfortunately, when we get to when we get to the end, right? And if you have technical questions, I'm not a technical guy, y'all. I am an amateur radio. I'm kind of I am a technician. People have been getting on me to get my general, but I'm not a technical dude. So um, if you ask a technical question, you're probably going to be disappointed, and I apologize for that up front. I'm a strategy guy. We have hundreds of technical folks or tactical people that get me over the finish line for technical stuff. So I'm going to be straight up front, right? We're going to do bottom line up front with amateur radio and public safety in general, outside of this event. Okay, we learned a lot during Helene. A lot of the pieces to our puzzle were all they are all starting to now come together. What we thought our catastrophic event would be like using amateur radio and what actually happened were alike in some ways and very, very different in others. Okay. But I want to start out just by saying that what we say and what we do, it will impact a relationship with those that engage us during an emergency. That's across the board, right? Specifically, we're talking about amateur radio today. I've been to a bunch of club meetings, trying to get out just to you know to, sh- to get out there and show support for some of our local clubs. And if you openly, if you say openly that an agency that you're trying to serve doesn't know what they're doing, I would not expect a phone call from them, right? So there's a time and place for that. But if you express that to an authority having jurisdiction, there's a trust factor and there's a relationships factor there, right? So don't be surprised. Also learned, why does it have to be this versus that, right? Um, we've gotten to a point now in North Carolina, definitely post this event. We just need amateur radio operators to do amateur radio operator things. Don't really care what that looks like. I don't. We just need people to listen. We need people to pass traffic. We need people to get help or information passed from point A to point B. Now, with that said, we're going to talk a little bit about the OXCOM position. That's an incident command structure position, an ICS position under the communications unit. Also super important. But it's all the same, right? It just has different roles. Amateur radio and the roles it plays, um, all of them are vital. And if I could connect every amateur radio operator in the FCC database to the first responder community, I'd do it, right? But I can't. So I think if your expectation is that is happening in the background in public safety, it's not. But I wish we could. Um, and again, I just want to give a shout out to those amateur radio operators that played a part in this response. I will never know all of them. I will never get to thank every single one of them, but there was a lot of amazing work, both Oxcom, who were mobilized on state mission assignments, and uh, non-affiliated, just amateur radio operators, either in trouble or on the other end listening to those people in trouble. So thank you for that. A little bit about us, the NCEM communications branch. I'm the communication branch manager, the lead. We have 3 positions. I have 2 deputies who are rock stars, Amanda Winans and Brandy Osborne. And then we also, the 24-hour watch office falls underneath our communications branch. So our job is to get North Carolina ready for its worst days. right? When I was hired in 2018, I kind of had in my mind an idea that September 26th would come. I didn't know it would come this soon, but I think we always felt and consistently feel the urge to continue to push forward to be prepared for something horrible. We did not expect this. Um, so that is our job. My job is to gameplay all of the things that people don't want to talk about, all of the things that make people uncomfortable. That is our job. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the communications ecosystem. This also is our job in a nutshell, right? These 4 lanes, we don't necessarily need to um, ensure that people are using them, but we have to make sure the networks in the pathways are available, right? So public to public, that's the interaction that goes on in normal daily life. Government to public, government to government, and then public to government. So you can read those. I'm not going to explain them all, but we pretty much lost 3 of the 4 of these in 22 counties in Western North Carolina. And I'll put up a map here in a minute. Um, so government to government was, I'm not going to say it was efficient, but it was working. All right. So, and that's a whole nother discussion on LMR systems and things like that. Um, so that's that. I think the one thing that I am going to focus on is that public to government, because amateur radio. We'll talk a little bit about, um, you know, just organically put together nets and things like that. That public to government wasn't necessarily a government movement, but that the intent of it, or the impression of it, was that eventually that message was going to get to someone who could get them help. So just need to flush that out a little bit. All right. So believe it or not, in emergency management, we're professional planners. So again, we can write 20 different plans. It's really good if you need to help falling asleep at night. But I just wanted to go through some stuff. In our 2023 version of our ESF2 plan, we kind of called it. We called it, and we it's a plan. You read it, but you don't necessarily put life to the plan. That's one of our lessons learned. We're going to rework our plans and say, holy smokes, this we need to be serious about these 3 things, whatever those are. So the CERT, the State Emergency Response Team. So for those of you that have knowledge of emergency management processes, that's the emergency support functions. That's in an EOC versus an ICS, which is out in the field, incident command system. All right. So the strategy of putting the puzzle pieces together, um, that's going to require a lot of information, right? That's an assumption. That has to be an assumption. Weather and other environmental factors are going to restrict movement of comms. No kidding, right? We experienced that. And those in Western North Carolina that are on, you experienced that firsthand. Roads were destroyed and gone. Significant portions of comm systems will be overwhelmed. Yes. During a catastrophic situation, certain requests for resources may be unrealistic, right? We saw a lot of that, and it was really, really difficult. It was very, very difficult to experience that. Um, so just going into that assumption, moving ahead, these are still assumptions, and there there may be a scenario for which comms networks are no longer viable. And again, if the public is in a zero comms environment, that's a really scary place to be. Multiply that times, 4 counties with catastrophic, and then 18 more. Okay, so this summer. We wanted to make sure we were starting to get comfortable or get ready for hurricane season. So we briefed this out at one of our biweekly meetings with our partners, and we're first responder comms is a lot more than a walkie-talkie, and especially to some of our executive level leadership people within public safety agencies. Um, they really don't need they don't want their walkie-talkie anymore, right? They want connectivity. They want to see what's happening. They want to know what's going on in the battle space. They want to understand where their people are. So that's a technology thing, right? Um, but we can't communicate if we don't know know and trust the people that we're trying to engage, right? So there's a lot of sweat equity put into the 90% relationship thing. So getting out to club meetings, getting involved in field day, making sure we hit as many places as we can, to get the people taking part in field day those extra points, like that all matters. We got to do that. And my counterparts, if anybody is on any other statewide interoperability coordinators, that's something we got to take priority in getting out there. Um, there is not one technology that's going to fix all your problems. It will help you through a situation, right? I heard someone talk about Starlink before. It's a great technology, right? That's a really, really good technology. Um, but again, there's risk there, and that again, that's probably a whole nother discussion to talk about risk, cyber risk and things like that. But that is exactly what needed to get into the street during the event. Um, and I don't know about you, but if I can't use my smart device to check my mail or my text messages, I get jumpy, I get uncomfortable. And when we have people in stressful situations, if you take that away from them, public safety, public anybody, if you take that away, people start to make clouded, judgment calls. So it's important that we train, and a recommendation to RATPAC is train and exercise without a technology, right? Get your families ready. That's something that I wish we trained a lot more, that human aspect. We'll talk just a minute about it in a little bit, but um, sometimes it's more important to talk with your loved ones and say, hey, if we're isolated, if I'm down at the store and everything goes kaput, like we got to have a plan for that, right? That gets us in a more more focused mindset, so we can get the work done. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about the storm. All right, so September 25th, 1400 hours. We had our first huddle up. My job is to my job is to set a hazard assessment based on what we are seeing, what we are doing, and what we're getting from weather intel and kind of what the street's saying. So I'm asking our deployable folks. I'm talking to my deputy, who was the strategic technology reserve coordinator, and I'm trying to get her gut feel on some things. So you can't read it probably, but that is the document that I submitted up my chain of command to the deputy ops chief and onto the director of emergency management. And so I'll read just a couple things on it. I put anticipated impacts from Helene. I label it as moderate, which is funny now looking back. But it says ESF2 anticipates impacts to critical infrastructure due to the tropical storm. The main risk will be to wireline and wireless commercial infrastructure. Given the threat of landslides, displacement or disruption of wireline could impact commercial cellular 911 service, LMR connectivity, or broadcast infrastructure, AM/FM radio. So that first bullet, um, you know, this is a lessons learned topic, right? So I'm going to be kind of straight with you guys, and everyone watching on YouTube afterwards. But we have a meteorologist assigned to ESF2, and he said basically this is going to rewrite history. Um, so in For those of you in public safety, or that you've served, like there's always that hope. You're like, eh, they say that for every hurricane, right? Whatever. um so the tactical movements of stuff, we deployed people, we got people where they needed to be forward, got them out into the west, got them pre-staged. But there was just that hope that we were going to be done by the weekend, right? So, and unfortunately that did not happen, and our meteorologist was hit the nail on the head. So here's where that this was our initial concerns. So we did mobilize people and resources to the State Emergency Operations Center, and believe it or not, um, we didn't know if it was going to impact the central part of the state as well. It was still a little wobbly at that point. So actually, we mobilized people to our central regional office and our western regional office. So central being kind of right in the middle of the state, and so on. So here's the weather brief. We were activated on September 26, 2024. Um, and if you look right there, you don't see that often. High widespread flash flooding And ultimately, the most rain, don't, I beg your pardon if I'm not correct or not, but the most rain was a little over 30 inches, I believe, in Yancey County, which is the town of Burnsville. It's not supposed to rain 30 inches in Yancey, in the mountains at all, right? So you have the Blue Ridge Escarpment. Some of it rolls into Tennessee, some of it rolls back into the streams and rivers that flow out towards the Catawba River into the central part of the state and then onto the ocean. So here's the hazard summary. Yep, extreme. We kind of all knew that. 20 inches of rain possible. It was more. All right, so kind of September 27th, 2024, right around 2100 hours is where where ESF2 and where our careers kind of changed. And for those of you on the phone that were impacted, this is kind of when things started to happen around us. The first thing we kind of knew, obviously, when the comms are gone, um, when the communications are gone and isolated, you don't hear anything, right? So we weren't really we weren't really focusing on anything because there wasn't a lot going on. And then we started to see stuff from social media start pick up, saying we can't reach our family anymore, so on and so forth. So this is a city of Charlotte area meteorologist, and he wrote a thing there. But I think the I highlighted a little section that says, "My worry is we're going to see scenes of devastation like we've never seen before," which immediately kind of flipped the switch for us, to start coming up with a plan. And we'll talk about that in a second. For those of you that are familiar with the FEMA lifelines, we went to yellow very soon after this, and then red the next morning, about 10 hours later. Red meaning, we have a devastated infrastructure, and it's going to be a bit before we get to it. Here's just a couple of pictures to show some of the stuff that was going on. This one, I do show this one. I give credit. It's one of our strike teams took this picture. I don't know where it is, so I apologize. But I do want to note the cabling wadded up there. You see it kind of flowing right there. One of our challenges is the rivers came up and the water was flowing so fast and with so much force, it just ripped all the fiber and all the infrastructure out of the ground and laid it elsewhere, or it just washed it away completely. So we had a huge challenge with our commercial partners to figure out where the right of way was, so we could start working to get some of that stuff back in there. That is an aerial shot from a helicopter recon mission that we did. We partnered with a commercial telecom and one of our energy sector folks. And you see the people walking in. That's I believe that's the Lake Lure getting up into Rutherford, up there into southern Buncombe County. So it's just the scope of what we had to deal with there. So so our strategic priorities, we had to sit down and immediately come up with some strategy. So number one, we had to establish continuity of government right away. Then we had to figure out what was actually happening. Um, and then from there, once we figured that out, we went, we started the normal processes that we get, um, for our, this is crazy to say, but our traditional landfalling hurricanes in eastern North Carolina. Um, that is, that is, we just started to support our normal process, right? Assembling and mobilizing more people, starting to look out across borders, we know we couldn't ask for help from South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, our normal partners. We had to go elsewhere. So we had one person, Dale Suffin, unsung hero of this whole event. We assigned one person just for access and fuel. That's it. We said, Dale, if there's a critical infrastructure location in the West, get to it and fuel it, go. And he absolutely did amazing work. So trying to get people up into those places to get fuel to the critical infrastructure locations. Um, and then obviously that public to government piece. So 911, 211, AM, FM radio, over the air televisions, and things like that. So, all right. So tactical priorities. The graphic on the right is so Brandy is our tactical deputy SWIC. So she's in charge of all the tactical teams, all the people, training, all that. And one of our tactical comms technicians, um, basically was like, "So this is what you want us to do, right?" And he drew a picture of that on his phone, and we basically said, "Yes, figure it out when you get out there. Do as much as you can. Just help as many people as you can. Get to, I think we said, start it. We sent 3 or 4 teams out, teams of 2, comms technician. They geared out as much as they could. Water, fuel, MREs, a bunch of stuff. They packed out and they hit the road, and they were gone. So we basically said, establish a baseline, figure out what's happening, find the local EM coordinator, county manager, mayor, whoever that might be, find them, get them some comms, get them talking to someone in a coordinating position out of the Western region. So that's what we did. You can read all these. We prioritize PSAPs and emergency communications centers, regain access to basic internet processes. So 911 in North Carolina is it's called an ESINet. It routes to different places. So 911 calls were ringing elsewhere in the state. We just need to get them internet connectivity to get those calls back. I mean, the call data back to there. So that was a win. The 911 center worked, or the 911 system worked. Um, and again, to support those ICS based activities where we were able. Um, so you know that when you have a lot of need, and you have a lot of emergency management coordinators that need a lot, that's difficult, right? You want to get them everything that you possibly can, um, and you want to get it to them right away. Sometimes it's just not realistic. Takes time, and when all the roads are gone, it takes you got to be creative. You got to be hardworking, creative, and patient. Unfortunately, and then provide that just-in-time training, right? And then sometimes fix the stuff that's been broken for a long time, or it's never gotten the attention. And we saw this a lot with amateur radio gear and EOCs. I hadn't been turned on in a while, right? And that's wherever you are in the country. I'm thinking that's a pattern. So, kind of a takeaway: if you do serve a local emergency management agency or a local fire department, whatever, and they have amateur radio gear, you might want to talk to them about it, and say, "Hey, when's the last time that stuff was checked, turned on? The antenna's probably trash." So we ran into some of that stuff, which you do the best you can. And then we had to start thinking about where we were going to be, right? The whole future ops planning cell. We had to assign a couple people just to start planning for 10, 20, and 30 days of ops tempo. So we knew we were gonna be in it for months, not days. So we had to set someone up um, to kind of fly ahead of where we were. And the minimum of fly ahead time for us was about 72 hours, and then that reached out to more like 6 or 7 days. So future ops would come over into our room. They'd say, "Where do you want to be in 7 days?" Besides saying in the pub, having a bourbon, we pretty much said better than today, right? Like, we just want to be better than we are right now. um, and that's what we work for every single day. um, so amateur radio in North Carolina, I'm going to start digging into this stuff, and then I'll pick up the pace a little bit. So amateur radio in North Carolina, we worked really hard. So North Carolina Emergency Management has had a great relationship with amateur radio in North Carolina. Do we reach um, every amateur radio operator in the state of North Carolina? No. Do we reach every amateur radio club in the state of North Carolina? No. But there has been some amazing work put in. Tom Brown and but I'd be remiss if I even attempted to name some of the OGs that did the hard work way before I even am sitting in this seat and leading this team. We never really put it in a plan. It was always kind of just we had training. We had everyone had their certs. Everyone had their thing, right? We never had a plan. So like if I'm a local EM coordinator, um, um, how do I engage my amateur radio club or Aries or Racies or whatever you want to call it, right? Um, how do I engage those people? What do I do? How do I approach that as a local emergency management coordinator? So we wrote it down. Um, and then we wrote down kind of the flip side of that. If I'm an amateur radio operator, some of the things that are going to be expected. Um, So, and it basically it that identifies the difference between strategy and tactics. So your strategy people, your amateur radio operators that don't want to be hanging on the side of a helicopter, the amateur radio operators that don't want to be, they just want to help, right? Identifies that as a strategy, and then it identifies those ICS positions, the Oxcom, the folks that are they're going to be certified, credentialed. They're going to do the task books. They're going to do all that. It identifies that, and it gives that local EM the confidence to believe that. So when someone comes to them and says, "Here's my task book, sign it," it gives them it gives the program those legs. It also establishes the state organization of Oxcom, kind of a. I'll explain that in a second. Then it establishes a process to activate, train, and qualified people to fill the Oxcom position in an ICS role. And following on to that, right? We did an IT and communications branch resource con ops, so concept of ops. So what that establishes, and that's for everybody. It doesn't matter what you are, who you are, what team you're a part of. That's the rules of the road. So that is going to dictate, um, if you mobilize, these are going to be the things that you do. These are going to be the things that you don't do. Um, and it basically gives, I think they're called the 10 commandments of, I forget what it is, but it's like, you're not going to try and sell somebody something when you go. You're not going to steal from people. You're not going to do this. You're not, like, it gives us some type of roadmap for the team as they hit the street. So, and that was a win for us. It seems like we didn't really have many wins, but that was a huge win for us. When our teams hit the street, they knew exactly what they were supposed to do. They knew exactly where they were supposed to go, the points of contact they were supposed to hit, the things that were off limits, and the things that were fair game. Now, a lot of it, and if Brandy's on, a lot of it, if we probably don't know what they actually did, which is a really good thing because we don't want to. But they did some amazing work, right? And we're really, 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 really proud of those folks. So now we're going to dig into actual amateur radio in North Carolina, right? So you have many, many, many different flavors of amateur radio here in North Carolina. All right, all of them important. All right, so you have established groups with positive impact or involvement at local emergency management agencies. So you have those groups that are established. They come to all the exercises. They do all the meetings. They, they they just they work, right. They put the work in and they do it, right. So you have that. You have established groups that want to have a positive impact, but they don't know how to make it happen, right. Those are the folks that are they want to form up, whether it's a church group, whether it's the local amateur radio club, non MCOM, whatever that is. um, they just want to do it, right, but they don't know how to make it happen. So either they've had a falling out with a previous EM coordinator or fire chief or whatever that is, and they've just given up, right? We got to do better. We got to fix that, right? That's got to be fixed. You have established groups that respond to high impact events and incidents. So non-governmental organizations, nonprofit disaster response. So these are all the folks that are getting out in the field, right? So IEEE Move, Baptist on Mission. And again, I'd be remiss if I tried to mention all of them, and I apologize if I miss anybody. But these are the folks that have established experience. They're going all over the world to do this stuff. Now you have established individuals that are engaged with AHJ, so they're the trusted agents. They're like I like to call them, like bub. Like the EM coordinator has a bub, and they're the amateur radio that's shown up for the last 20 years. They know how to work the gear, and they don't want anybody else touching it because that's bubs. And if bub ain't here, I don't want you in there, right? And how does that look to our established groups that have positive impact and they want to get in there, but they can't because bub is holding on so tight because he doesn't want to give it up? We got to fix that, y'all. You guys got to get over that. So if you're a bub, you got to have a really difficult conversation with yourself, and you gotta let people in. Um, and then you have your non-established groups that activate and assume roles, right? So that's positive or negative. You have people that form up and they do it, right? So it could be amazing work like we saw in North Carolina. It could be could be detrimental work. It could be spreading misinformation. It could be doing things that are directly against what your mission is trying to accomplish, right? And then you have non amateur radio operators that find themselves self involved, right? So when we talk about our Mount Mitchell repeater, right? I watched a couple of videos on that, right? So some of these folks, it was people were calling out. They found there was a mission, a role to fill. They became involved, right? And that ended up being a huge win. So that information poured in. You had amateur radio operators that found themselves in a spot. All right. So that is kind of how we. That is what and folks in North Carolina that are on the team. You're probably hearing this for the first time, but that is what I figured out. That is what I that it just kind of started to click after talking to some folks that experienced this and some folks that a couple of the clubs. Um, so we've got to figure this out, and I don't know how. Right, and I guess that's something that's something that we need to work it out, to get it somewhat aligned. All right. Okay, so now let's talk about the event. So the specific ICS aux composition established at 3 locations. So the State EOC, RCC Central, and RCC West. Those are the coordination centers. We had people up, we had people established, and on doing shift work. So, and I can't, again, I would be totally misrepresenting my Auxcom team if I try to even explain what they were doing. But all I can tell you that, again, it goes to our training and it goes to our um, experience, our exercises, all of that. That when they get in there, they're on mission, um, for the most part. At least, like I said, this was kind of unimaginable, but things happen. The lead in those rooms reports to the COML or the IC or whatever. If there's a priority message, they provide it, right? They work it. They do what they need to do with it. We never thought that all of the messages that we had would be priority, right? And then who do they go to? And then what do they do with it? We're going to talk about that in a minute, because that was difficult, right? And I'll elaborate that on that in a minute. So spot reporting, I have in my office. I finally got to go through our doc box at State EOC. We had about 68 spot reports, all of them reporting significant stuff that I thought I would never see on a spot report, right? And it's again, it's tough. Like so that those 60 things lost in a sea of 660 things, all happening at the same time, unimaginable, right? And some of those things don't, regardless of what the messaging is, what are you going to do with it? All right. And I think that's a conversation again that the amateur radio community has to have. What are you going to do with the message? If you have a message that someone's trapped in their house and the water's coming up, what is the process? I don't think we've taken that in our training or our exercises, or even our open discussions in North Carolina to say amateur radio operators are not supposed to be 911 dispatchers, right? Some of you are, which is awesome. Thank you for your service. I was one for 17 years. But that's difficult. That's hard. And it's asking a lot. Um, then, right. So there were some that were attempting to manage voice traffic out of local EOCs. There were people that those trusted agencies muster up and get out there, right? Whether they could even get there, whether they were asked to be there. Again, not sure. Um, and then RCC West ComLs actually started to request targeted information from local public safety and local amateur radio operators, anyone, to get ground truth. And I have a story from the night side ComL working with one of the Auxcom folks at RCC West, basically saying, can you reach out to people and see what routes are open? Like if there's a road going to blank, can you figure that out? Right. And it ended up being an elaborate, like, this gas station is open and it has power. This has that. And um, now we had some issues with um, information sharing, which is that could be a whole nother RATPAC discussion on, you have something, you have a needle in a stack of needles, and you need to get it to, you need to get it somewhere. How does it get there? and is it effective when it gets there? So again, challenge. Um, and then those critical infrastructure locations. Anybody have eyes on this address? There again, you get into the position of um, a couple things. A couple things that I learned, right, and something that I did, that I had to. I'm a proponent of amateur radio, uh, just as much a part of our first response as anything else. I chose to not deploy amateur radio operators in a forward location. That was my decision. I did it because I did not want to send our amateur radio operator out into an austere environment and potentially become harmed. I was not prepared to have one of my team killed in the line of duty. I made that decision. I would make it again, but that is something that I never ever thought that I would have to do. So just to kind of give you the idea of the approach we were taking from the state coordination level, because I know a lot of you guys on the call, you guys were in it, right? At the local level, you were in it, you were experiencing it. So to kind of give you that complete picture, and then monitoring the ad hoc effective amateur nets for intel and information. So we had people listening to that Mount Mitchell. I got a brief out on it. I can't even remember what day it was. Somebody came in and said there's somebody operating on Mount Mitchell. It's really effective. I said, are we listening to it? They said they are. And I said, cool, roll on. Don't get in the way. So again, ad hoc, finding yourself in a situation where you're just trying to do good with what you have in front of you. Um, so that was kind of kind of our rollout, right? Um, so let's get into the lessons learned, because we have a lot of them, right? Number one, I said it before, got to improve our amateur radio capabilities at command and control locations. Got to do it. It's got to be a priority, and unfortunately, it took this to kind of to snap us into the reality of we have some that are super capable, and others that have nothing. I never thought to have anything, don't have any money to do it, and it's just not acceptable. We got to do better. Um, so this is something that, again, this is a self inflection learned. We need greater guidance and autonomy to Oxcom leadership. Um, Again, with the complexity, even it, with Oxcom operators comes questions, a lot of questions, right? Because I know in North Carolina that all of our amateur radio operators that are trained to fill that Oxcom role, they all want to do 100%. They want to do they want it to be the best. They want to be the best, and I really respect that. However, we have to understand that given the autonomy, they will already do that, right? So, for our team, just saying, you guys have this, you guys know, just go do your thing, right? It's not for me to say, it's not for me to answer, it's for me to get out of your way. It is for me to empower you and then move aside and let you go and do the thing. And again, I think you know I think I read something about an epic fail, right? So identifying specific frequencies during events like Skywarn does, right? So established emergency nets. I don't know what those are. I'm not going to go throwing frequencies on paper, um, because that might not be the proper way to do it, right? But we did find some really, really fantastic sites and nets that popped up. Might be a conversation we have. Hey, can we pop that on paper and make it an established location for a net, kind of like we do with the HF frequencies? And there are some 440 link stuff out in the eastern part of part of the state, right? And some DMR stuff, some really good. I see my friend Marvon from Boone, North Carolina, right? It's the great DMR network. Let's get that established. Let's put it on paper. Let's make it. Let's put that in our exercise and our training. Let's do it, rather than just assuming that people are going to know that. Um, who are we trying to talk to? I don't think we've ever established that, right? I think, who are we trying to talk to, and how are we going to get to that specific person? rather than just hailing out or blasting out messages out into the wind, hoping it'll reach its destination. How do we do that better? I don't think we've ever, at least I don't remember. And again, I'm not a technical guy, but I don't remember ever actually during an exercise, regardless of what the frequency is, saying this message is for this person and then verifying that it got there. That just never thought of that, right? But I think for as we move into these as we move into these more complex events, or heaven forbid you guys experience this yourself in your area of the United States, like that's going to be important. Okay. So just think about that. And then establish more. That's a poorly written line, but establish more lines for priority emergency traffic. So again, if a net control has a list of 911 based traffic, where do they send it and how do they do it? So someone finds themselves in a role where they're an ad hoc net control for something horrible, I mean, what's the out? What's the what's the process to get that out of their hands into um, into that environment of giving it to someone who can potentially do something with it. Um, then we need to start working with academia, right? And it was pretty cool. I went to I forget, it was a meeting at an EOC, but a student showed up from Duke University, and I immediately was like, I need to pick that kid's brain. I want to know why he's here. He's just like, I just like old tech. I was like, I like old things. I like taking apart stuff. I was like, you need to find about 6,000 of your friends and spread them across the country, right? And then I think you need um, to get that moving. So how do we do that, right? And again, back to the professor, like I went and gave a discussion at App State University this past week. One of my good friends, the EM coordinator up there, was like, "Come talk to it's a student's EM class, right?" Mentioned amateur radio. They're like, "That's cool. Yeah, I think my grandfather did." I'm like, "Oh man, like sure." Like there's so many resources out there. Um, get into it, because if we don't, I'm afraid it's going to be a lost, or it's going to be just all like public safety people getting their licenses and just using their frequencies at will, right? um which is not a bad thing, but um and then improve technology and automate as many methods of information gathering as possible, right? Um so I think we have to do better, right? Getting as much information that we can automated and in a place where we can show it. And I think WinLink Shares does a good job with this. I got a map put in front of me, a day or two in, basically showing all the WinLink traffic over shares. It was awesome, right? I could take that and I could show the boss when they're like, "What the hell are you doing back there?" In the comms room, like, so you can actually say, "Hey, here's a map. Check it out. This is what's happening. These are the reports we're getting, and here's the messages, and I have them in my hand." Right. So we got to start taking that down the road. We got to get less stagnant. We got to keep it moving. So digging in a little bit into the continuity of government, and um, we'll get you guys done here in a minute. Sorry, I'm going a little bit long, but um, so just a kind of a visual. I just talk about showing a picture right to the boss, but here's a picture, right? Everything in red is contacts that we made um, with an official in a leadership role, either to check on them, give them resources, make sure that a lot of their infrastructure, critical infrastructure, was working effectively. Um, so that is those are those locations for which we did that. So RCC West, little funny story is of about 2 days in, probably the busy and the most complex part, we had to evacuate the RCC West. So everything that we had in that building, we basically had to move it. Um, that's a challenge, right? So amateur radio gear, everything had to go. The building was tiny. We had from the 3305 you see on the right all the way to the right. That was the regional coordination center, tiny space, and it was quickly we quickly outgrew it. So And then we moved into a community college space up the street a little bit, which was cool because there was plenty of room. It wasn't cool because they had to wire the entire building for connectivity, do all the networking, run all the antennas. So it was an absolute huge lift for our comms technicians, our COMLs, ITSLs, and they absolutely knocked it out of the park. Like, I can't be more prouder of these folks. But also, it had a cage under lock and key. So a lot of the Pelicans and things you see back there, those were all of our cache gear. Because honestly, things grow legs during these events. Everybody needs um, every if someone needs it, they're gonna take it. And I don't say that to be malicious in any way, right? Because everyone needed everything uh, for days, weeks. Um, and then here's our N4WBO run antennas, and that ended up being their spot. Kind of hate with great haste, they had to find a new home. Um, and again, it's what's given to you, it's what's put in front of you. But they did amazing work out there. There was 6 or 7 Oxcom operators. I see some of them on the line, but I mean, with given these odds, again, home run, like, you do what you can. And again, I think I'll hit one of the slides on it, right? But um, let's see. Here we go. Um, some of the things that you see during the event, some of the stuff that's really difficult. And I think I saw uh, some of the stuff. No one was listening. I heard somebody say no one was listening to certain frequencies or things, and yeah, that's absolutely accurate. There was a lot going on, and having to completely disconnect all the gear to put it back somewhere else was a challenge. So right on, yeah, yeah, we did not. Um, we had people within our own team say communications doesn't work here. Someone's getting fired. Somebody needs to be fired. That was from that was an internal comment made by one of our own people, right? So that kind of shows you what morale does when you're just getting your ass kicked day after day after day. No wins, just it was a struggle. Um, and then you're hearing from other angles, right? We need a win here, and then and even in the amateur radio world, right? Oh, their stuff didn't even work, but mine did. Like, what? I try and understand um, what you're trying to prove by that. Um, I it's kind of struggling with that a little bit. Like, if you are, and I'll show that in a couple minutes, but um, so we came up with on the fly a few days in. We had a crotchety old fire chief who's a COML. He he was put on night shift, and he was um he was in a tough spot, stuff like that. He said, you know what, I got up today, got out of the hotel, and the woman at the desk said, hey, I hope you have a really, really great day today. And he said, you know what, we're going to have a great day today. And he sat down, and we came up with these amongst the group at State EOC, kind of some guiding principles. And so this is what we're going to base our program on, these 5 guiding principles moving forward, kind of from what we took. Do your best and ask for help if you need it. Do what's right by local agencies. Be honest. If you think you're better than anybody else or everyone else, or you're too good to do a basic task, you're probably not going to succeed. At least on this team, you're not. And we are afraid, but our courage is going to motivate us to do good. So, kind of to wrap it all up, moving forward. um, so kind of a gut check here for the group, right? Um, So, did you get a feeling of anger when we talked about this? Just tossing it out there, or do you get a feeling of superiority when something like this is talked about? So, and again, I think some of the comments and the things that we heard is like just tossing it out there. Who are you trying to be better than? If you are, and why? But you know, but just something to kind of inflect on. And again, if you have an issue with authority, then why is there an expectation of someone to give you instruction? I think that's something that we really need to look internally and say, um, cool. Do what you got to do. But if you're looking to an established entity to give you instructions, it's kind of contradictory. Um, and there is a role for anybody. So amateur radio, public safety, anything. There's a role for anybody that has access to any radio on any frequency during your unimaginable event, right? And they're going to happen. We've our friends in California had a really horrible, um, you know, had a horrible situation out there. I hated seeing that, but it's going to happen. Just you got to be ready. You got to come to the, um, you got to come to the realization that's going to happen. Um, Also, residents are going to come together and do some amazing things. You have to trust that happens, and that's where we need to get. That's where the good information is. That's where the ground truth is. Getting into the local entities in the areas, right? Um, Got to do better with local EM engagement. With amateur radio groups and vice versa. Amateur radio groups have got to do better getting engaged for times of MCOM. Oops, and then you need to expect the unimaginable, right, in your community. Like somebody had said, um, did you think it was crazy when someone said, these four counties are off the air and you can't get in touch with any of them? And all of us said, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's crazy. I think it's non-plausible. I think it's a waste of time during an exercise. And we had 19 up to 22. So you got to expect that. So I leave you with just a photo, right? I think um, one of the things we were able to do during the event, we needed some positivity, we needed some move, we needed a win, right? Um, so that photo there is Tom Brown and for TAB. That's that the we were able to award him the Order of the Longleaf Pine, which in North Carolina is the highest honor that the governor can bestow on a citizen in the state of North Carolina. So, um, you know, the relationship matters, and regardless of how bad it is, you got to take a win. And you got to keep it moving forward. Um, so that's what I have, everybody. Dan, I appreciate it.
Really helps if I mute before I start talking. Thanks. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. Very good. It's obvious we need more realistic training throughout the year, different views on things. Let's get some questions out there. Barry, what we got in chat?
Nothing, a lot of good comments, but no real questions yet. But there is a hand up.
All righty. Yeah, leave it to Gene. He gets his hand out there. Go ahead, Gene.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? This is Gene, November 3 X-Ray Uniform Sierra, here in Killeen, Texas. Very familiar with the North Carolina area, being stationed at Fort Bragg 3 times. Let me just say that this has been an excellent briefing tonight. Tomorrow I'll be going in to look up the all emergency management plan and see how it compares to the one here in my area of Texas. But nevertheless, when you talk about uh, regional operators being able to provide communications, I'm part of an EOC as a volunteer, and that's 20 miles away. I think a lot of ham radio operators perhaps forget that there's like maybe a 7-block area around them that they can be the spotters of what's going on in that area, not that EOC 20 miles away. And so that is one of the things that I did take away from tonight, that you kind of like emphasize that, and that anybody who has access to radio can be of a support function in getting the information from that area to the people who have the power to handle it. So I just want to thank you for this presentation tonight. Great job. Thank you.
No, thanks, Gene. Appreciate you.
Okay, there's one question in chat. On the whole, would you say that spontaneous ham volunteers were a help or a distraction for your group?
Good question. For the most part, helpful. I don't have any other information to prove otherwise. Um, I think as the kind of the days went on, there was definitely distraction. Um, not to get into kind of some of the experiences that we had, with trying to figure out what was what and people kind of getting on a political tone, taking it kind of to that place where it didn't need to be. That was prevalent a few days in, once people started to get those, Maslow's hierarchy of needs back and getting those things. Um, you know, that was happening, but for the most part, a benefit. Um, and again, I beg your pardon for all, all of our North Carolina folks um, on the line here. I don't want to misrepresent you guys. But yeah, and there's a question as well. Viper. So Viper is statewide radio network. So sorry about that. I tried to not use acronyms as much as possible. So I see a bunch of hands. So John, VE3JXX, I think you were up first, and then Dave.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you, Greg, for this presentation. It was absolutely awesome. Loved it. And what I'm trying to do is kind of set up an emergency group through our ham radio club in my area. It's a smaller, not a huge community, but we have Twin Cities next door to us that would probably be incorporated in it. As a ham radio group, we really struggle with our municipalities because they haven't been hit hard yet with anything, and they tend to think it's unimportant, and one day they are going to get hit, and then they're going to realize they should have been doing something. But that's kind of what I'm working towards. I'm trying to reach out and try to make them understand that there's some valuable in doing that. And so that's what I come to learn, how you guys do it. You guys south of the border of us, I think, got a way better handle on it than we do, and we need to learn from it. So, and I'm hoping from Dan that maybe I can get a copy of this presentation, a video if possible, because I could possibly utilize that and share it, and maybe there's a lot of good points in there that would be a wake up. So so anyway, that was my question. Hopefully I can get a copy of the video. And for those that are on emergency management or support it in a ham radio fashion, thank you for your service.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I think you're not alone with certain emergency management agencies that I just don't think they I don't think they see the importance. You hit the nail on the head, right? That just because they've never needed it before. Um, but I'll share an experience that I had. I worked with the Charlotte Fire Department. I was on the field communications team, right? And under certain, we would go out to the scene, right, and be tactical dispatchers out on the scene there. I can tell you that we sat in staging unused probably a year and a half plus. Right, we would go out there, we would just kind of hang out, sit in the truck, and then the boss would be like, "Yeah, we don't need you. You can beat it." And we would do that. But that one time when it did not go right, when we were sitting right there just chilling out, and they needed us, and that was the one that got us in. So be patient and don't assume their lack of response is them not wanting you. I think that is a common pitfall of anyone who is trying to get your organization, your group, that foot in the door to be included, right? Still run your own processes, run your exercises, get your groups together, assume that you're going to be in there at some point, plan out, take a Google shot of the roof, draw your measurements, do your things that you're going to potentially need to do so that when they do call you, you're going to be like, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure there's coffee in the pot. So that's another little secret that I'll share with you guys. If you want to get to somebody in the EM world, get some coffee on. That'll be it. So thank you. Let's go to Dave and then Kevin. So KG7LEA.
Thanks. This is Dave in Redmond, Washington. I'm very interested in the management and the deployment of your volunteers. did you have teams that were available to you that you could deploy as teams, or did you have to deploy individuals and they would make it up as they go along in terms of organization, management, leadership, that sort of thing?
So a little of both. So initially, and this isn't the entire group. So we had comms, we had communication strike teams. That's a team of 2 people, usually communications technicians, um, formed up in a communications vehicle, and they got in the street. So we had 3 of those to start. We had task forces, which is the mobile tower, radio cache, generator, and we asked for those from out of state. So we got a task force from Connecticut, Florida. Um, where else we get one? Shoot, oh man, I feel horrible. Alabama. So they showed up, and we gave them, basically they were assigned like a 1 or 2 county area. So we'd say, go do the best you can, make the most impacts as you can, right? So those, there are somewhat rules that you have to have a state mission number. So we will put them on a state mission. Same with volunteers. If I have volunteers, and it doesn't matter if it's an amateur radio operator, volunteer firefighter, anyone who is volunteering their time, we put them on a mission number, and that gets them on the liability insurance. That gets them on the, so if you set up an antenna and the wind blows over and smashes the fire chief's car, you're you're not held liable for that. That is, you are a part of that mission. That is a duty that you're performing at the request of the state. So um, yeah. So as far as amateur radio groups, a lot of that was organic. There were 4, I think 3 or 4 that individually jumped on with a team. I know Greensboro, North Carolina, the fire department comms team there has a really close relationship with their local club, so they tacked them on their team, and they boogied on up the mountain. Um, and I just think I just it's I just it was difficult to make the call to be like, hey, I don't necessarily want the Oxcom position just randomly out there with no accountability. That's a scary place for just for me personally. I felt personally accountable for folks. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Dave.
Did the did your volunteers report to paid staff in their deployments? So they were seconded to the to each of these teams.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. All right. Let's see. We'll get you. All right, cool. Thank you. And now we'll go to so Kevin, I think you're next, and then Brent.
Thank you very much, Greg, for a really great informational presentation. I do have a question for you, and that is, how did you handle the documentation? The 214, 205, 213, Form 3009. Did you use paper or computer, or did you say, we need to handle the stuff first and then we'll work on the paperwork?
That's a great question. I'm going to tell on myself, Kevin. So I did not. So at the strategic level, at the EOC, um, my role throughout this whole event, I don't think I sat at a desk for more than 15 minutes at a time for probably 20 days. So my role on this is to interface with all of the other support functions. So I was working a lot with energy, our energy partners, and trying to cut deals with lawyers, and not cutting a deal. You know what I mean? I'm like, if we're trying to replace thousands of miles of fiber, you can't just roll it down the street, right? But to your point, the folks in the West, that was an ICS. So yes, there are 214s, there are 205s made every day. We have a whole different presentation that goes into that piece of our response. So how many ComLs? We did have a Com C position, and we also had an IT and IT comms branch manager established. So, and those folks did, I can't, everyone did amazing work, but I can't tell you how stressful that role, that leadership position in the Western region. There were 2 gentlemen that stepped up and really did great work, and they did their 205s, they did their 214s just as trained, and I commend them for it.
On paper or on computer?
Paper. Um, our biggest thing that we struggled with is inventory. So inventory and resource tracking was done on a computer, and that
Mm,
was a night. Well, I'm not gonna say it was a nightmare because I didn't do it, but it was difficult. We shipped out probably about 1,100 cache radios, and they were probably accounted for in 3 different databases. So common pitfall there.
great.
Yep,
Thank you very much.
absolutely. Thank you, sir. Uh, let's see, Brent, go ahead in Texas. Hope you're
Yes,
well.
sir. I live in southeast Texas, and of course, we're very we get frequent hurricanes in our area. And I
Mhm.
understand earlier you were stating that that between amateur radio or ham radio and the local government, it was a large chasm. Uh, Ours is the same way, and it's getting further and further every day. And it seems like every year they kick us further out the door, if not all the way out.
Mhm.
And it's to me, it's just insane because in our area, as you will know, we get a lot of hurricanes in this area, tropical storms and such. And I was just wondering, did it take a complete failure for y'all to get together with each other?
No, I don't. No, it did not. Thankfully, in certain like so, some areas they just don't. They choose not to engage, and we're not going to change that, right? This, myself as the state of North Carolina representative of emergency management, I'm not going to go down and tell a local how to run their shop. That's just not how they do it. But what I can do is I can educate them and I can show them lessons learned. I can say, hey, look, 2 years ago this happened, and this is how amateur radio. This is how you know VSAT or the satellite stuff worked. This is how um, satellite phones, right? That was a big need for this one, right? A lot of people turned those off because it was too expensive. Well, you might want to turn those on. So I'm not going to say it was an epic failure that took integration. I think it was the piece. How can I say this? It was it was gaining the trust and the acceptance to get in the door. So if and again, I kind of go back to one of the comments I made, like if you're constantly having bad interactions with the EM coordinator or an official in there that you're trying to help, um, there's not much you can do with that, right? And you don't want to tarnish the capabilities you do have by getting into an argument or telling them they suck at what they do, because then they'll tell their friends that, and then not the next thing you know, at a conference around you know a, around adult beverages, now one person's telling the rest of the people that never to use this capability because y- you know so I just think, again, what we say and what we do is important.
Right.
uh it's important, and sometimes, like, yeah, I don't know, I hope that helps you.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, thank you. Let's see, KN6RVU, go ahead.
Oh, yes. You mentioned WinLink, and one of the things I wondered is in drills, accuracy of data is always a question, particularly when you're trying to fill out a form by pencil. And so we have found that WinLink is a very good way to communicate the ICS forms,
Hmm.
accuracy, it gives position. And you mentioned technology, things like Starlink and things like Arden that have microwave links. So when the internet goes down and the cell phones go down, you have others. It's really good to have redundant systems and a mesh system. How did you go about that? Did you have that set up pretty accurately beforehand, or did you not use WinLink or did you train on WinLink?
Yeah, all the above. We have established WinLink training. So actually, um, we amended our training and our exercise program for amateur radio to include an 8-hour session on the use of WinLink. So you have to do that if you're going to be coordinated, or I'm sorry, if you're going to be credentialed in North Carolina, i.e., able to receive a mission order. You have to have taken that training. So, and as far as WinLinks, Tom, Dwayne, you guys could probably tell us. There's a bunch. I do know that there's a lot. And so prior to this event, we are seeing local county level EM agencies starting to ask for and order that equipment to get into their EOCs. Just for and I don't and I am it's good for me because I'm able to go after some grant funding to provide that for them if they can't go after it or can't get it themselves. So recently, Winston Salem in Forsyth County, and then Fayetteville, for those of you that's served down there in Cumberland County. So they were issued their gear, they have it, and they're rocking and rolling with it. That was a couple months before. So our plan is to continue that more and more. The more we can get, the better. Follow that pace plan.
So do you use Arden
Question.
also, or just basically WinLink at this time?
I do not know what Arden is, but I'm sure we do. I'll totally swag it. I trust that if I was to ask, I'm pretty certain they would tell me we good.
Okay, and Starlink, that's becoming more popular and it's cost effective. And there's now have cell phones that will actually communicate with Starlink.
Oh yeah. So I'm a I'm a I'm a horrible poker player, right? But I want to have a fistful of cards. So um I want to have all of it. Whatever it is, I want us to have the best um the best
And
opportunities.
bandwidth, because not only with amateur radio, if you can have messages like email, you need the bandwidth to do it. And so those techniques are really good for bandwidth and a lot of messages to get on and get off quick so you can handle more traffic.
Yeah, cheers.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation.
Yep, absolutely. Dennis, Whiskey 6 Delta Quebec.
Yeah, good evening. And Greg, thank you first off so much for this presentation. I've been looking forward to hearing this for a while. So this has been fabulous. A couple of things I wanted to ask you about. One, and this is one personal experience with one of our disasters here in our community is critical incident stress management. Have you you got a program to deal with that with your amateurs? I mean, you're basically exposing them to a lot of stress, and
Mhm.
that's not their daily job. And it seems like and like I say, I speak from experience. We had our major earthquakes here back in 2019, and that was for me personally was a big deal. I had to deal with that, and it's debilitating and will shut you down
Mhm.
completely. And yeah, I think about that, and other hams dealing with these kinds of situations, they've got to be dealing with that sort of thing. Whether your served agency or AHJs will provide that CISM or whatever it takes, the mental
Yep.
health aspect of it.
Yeah, 100%. We take that very seriously. Actually, we meet every other week. Wednesday, 1 hour every other Wednesday. We've been doing it for probably 6 years.
Yeah.
And recently and it was actually, thank goodness, it was before this. My other deputy, Amanda, is passionate about the human factors in these types of events, right? So um, it's not normal for people to think that they have to work 20 hours
Mhm.
and take 4 hours off and then do it for 16 days straight. That is not that is not how we succeed here. That you
Mhm.
do not have to you don't have to sit at the radio for 16 hours. It's not, no. So to answer your question specifically, yes. About 2 years ago, North Carolina Emergency Management established the RAI, the Responder Assistance Initiative, and that is therapists, peers, all of that. They activated, were put on mission, and deployed. They had teams deployed to the west. They had teams at state EOC, and any amateur radio operator involved um, in the response in the west, central, or the EOC is considered a responder. So that is open to them. It is free of charge, and I am a customer, to be
Yeah.
completely transparent with the group.
Yeah.
Because again, I think we did a stress check in every day, and there's a stress continuum, just like an interoperability continuum. and we take it very, very seriously. It's color coded, so red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. Red being like I'm out of control. I am no longer. I wrote something down. I wrote something down. I kept a diary during this event, so I wrote something down for those that have an interest in leadership, leadership skills and things like that. But like, how do I motivate my team if I'm no longer invested in the mission? Like,
Oh,
at that point, you're in the red. You don't need to be there. So when we started thinking of that, we huddled up. We got some assistance in. My counterpart in Wisconsin came down and was basically like, "Go home, spend some time with your family, get out of here, beat it." So that is super important. That is, and I appreciate your question.
that's great. I appreciate the answer. I wanted to share a couple of other things. One of the things we do here in our community, where the earthquakes occurred here. This is an area called Indian Wells Valley out here in California. It's an isolated area. There's about roughly 30,000 residents in the area here when we're affected by the earthquakes.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we have in our community is something we call an emergency services committee.
Mhm.
And we pull people, in fact, we just met today. We have a monthly meeting with our group. We meet with first responders, law enforcement, sheriff's department, police department, fire, Red Cross, Salvation Army, CERT, and we have a civilian portion to the police department, which is called PACT. We have them there as part of that. Of course, the amateur radio community is part of this. We meet every month, and in doing so, we've built that communications and verbal communications network between all the different agencies within our community. And I think that's something, amateur radio has been a big part of that. In fact, amateur radio was part of what started this ESC meeting, which was fabulous with the police department. And we've built that relationship over about 30 years in our community here. I hear people talk about, other hands talk about the relationships with the various agencies, and they have trouble with that. I just think about if you could build something like that in your community, it would be just so wonderful. We have really benefited from that here in our community. That was
That's good.
absolutely awesome aspect of what went on during our earthquake. I cannot even begin to comprehend what your people went through there. The earthquake changed me forever here. And I've been through every major earthquake in my lifetime in California, but this one was beyond belief. And I just have no comprehension of how you would have dealt with all of that. So thank you so much for being here tonight and doing this. This was a wonderful presentation, lots of great information, and is, like I said, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks, Dennis.
Sure.
Bill,
What do
AC7S.
you want me to help you down? What? This? You need this? This?
1 second there.
We got a live mic.
There we go. We got him. Go ahead, Bill. You're on.
Yeah, thank you for the great presentation.
Sir.
Heart goes out to all you people down there in every level. Up here, I live in the Pacific Northwest. We have a volcano. It went the other way, so it didn't hurt us too much where I live, but just made a mess. But one thing I was interested in is your WinLink certification, your 8-hour class. Is that documentation available for others to plagiarize, review?
I'll talk to the Godfather. I don't see why not, but we'll have to scrub it out and make sure it's still good. I don't think, yeah. But it was a homebrew class, so they did amazing. I know Laura Cutchins out of the East, and there's some instructors that they go after it. They give them once or twice a year. We need to step it up a little bit. Obviously, this definitely kind of derailed a lot of our training. So, but we're starting to get back after it. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of the stuff that we've gotten, a lot of plans that we've benefited from, someone else did them first, or we've taken just a template or a building block and we've just kind of made it what we need it. So I'm all about that. Plagiarism is accepted in
MCOM is still working its way around Washington State. We don't have it down in our area yet, and so I can't send I'm a EC for Aries. I can't send my people to it because it's not available yet.
Sure.
Working the best we can,
Mhm.
but also looking to make a higher quality volunteer. So when we do need to come out. But I just wanted to thank you for your presentation, and I will be recommending it to all my counterparts in my district here and a few other people as well.
Thanks, Bill. I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much.
And my counterpart there in Washington State's great.
It's hard for me to talk when I'm muted. Thanks, Greg. Wait, hang on here, Barry. There's been lots of questions over here about the presentation. We will get it out there. Greg will be sending me the slides, so you'll get a copy of the slides when you go to see the presentation. It's all going to be out there. And unusual, but I will probably follow up with a mass email. More people involved with looking at this. Lots of very good information here. I see your hand, Dan. Let's go to Barry next. He was up there. Barry, go ahead.
There's a whole bunch of questions in chat we'll go through, unless you want to have Dan do his question first.
Go ahead, Dan, take it.
I just wanted to mention that an 8-hour class in WinLink is a great idea. However, WinLink is a perishable skill, as it were, and ongoing exercises, each presenting a new level of challenges, I think will keep people ready to go. Just saying, it's like a lot of other things. And critical incident stress debriefing in federal agencies is mandated in any kind of incident, and it's well to work that into the hot wash as fast as you can after the incident. You mentioned 16 20-hour days in a row, and boy, things started clicking too loudly in my brain. You know there's going to be aftermath, physical and psychological remediation required.
Agree.
Okay, Barry, go ahead.
My first question was, have you considered publishing the IAP, which might give operators some of the information you mentioned as needed by operators? So is there a published IAP since it's published?
That is not my decision. However, we are working. There are numerous after-action reports in process of being built. So, a lot of what I talked about is going to be included in a document that will be publicly available. There were so many IAPs written, so many different plans and things. All that is not my decision to release those. It is. Again, like I said, I probably sat at a desk for 15, 20 minutes a day. But there is some great information, again, starting to be drawn out. Like we didn't even talk about half of the stuff that worked, air to ground stuff to coordinate. I think it was 16 plus airframes to get our state radio network in those. I mean, that's unheard of. I mean, they were, as they were turning blades, the stuff was getting loaded by some SMEs, and then you have AM, FM radio emergency managers going to AM radio stations to give out daily guidance instructions to citizens. Right, that's over the top. That's great. That is great planning at the local EM level, just to think of it. But that led to the importance of, we got to get these guys fuel. Is that allowed under FEMA's, giving out fuel? Not necessarily, but it was for this event. So, I mean, we're going to get fuel. We're going to get fuel to those folks if that's the government to public piece. Because if we don't, someone else is going to get the message out there. It may not be accurate. So, but good question.
some of this already spoke over.
Say again, Barry?
Answered. I'm going down the listing. The
I saw
presentation
something.
will be on YouTube pretty soon. Dan can handle that. Let's see. As far as I know, you had mentioned about in Florida, we've written into our plans the needs for having an alternate EOC, statewide, countywide, local, citywide. And we actually needed that in my local community when the EOC, which was in a fire station, got flooded. They had to pick everything up and move it. Fortunately, we had a plan. They knew where to move it to. There was equipment already cached there. And within an hour or so, they were up with the secondary EOC. Our state has a wonderful alternate EOC. God forbid something should happen to the main state EOC. They know where they can go, and it's all set up and ready to go. A lot of places don't have that. A lot of resistance to doing stuff like that. As far as plans, the younger emergency management people don't want to think of catastrophes. They really, really don't. For example, we have a big lake just to the northwest of it called Lake Okeechobee, which we want to have see what's going to happen. God forbid the dike should break. Don't ever mention that to us. We don't want to plan for that. So when you don't plan for it, it's going to happen. So we're ready, and we have all our stuff ready. They're just not mentally ready for a catastrophic hurricane, even down here, because they've never really seen a catastrophic hurricane. So it's scary sometimes. Let's see, I'm looking down
Agree.
here.
I saw something, Barry, about GMRS. I'm not sure. I'm sure people used it. Everything was on the table. We worked with FCC a bunch too, as well, just to say it's all on the table. Use grace. Give us some leeway here, and they did. They were great.
Were any of the radio bands better than the others?
Oh gosh,
I don't think you can answer that, but
I can't. I know they were all active. I'll tell you that. I don't know what was better than the other, but yeah.
Okay, let's pick up Charles. Charles, you got your hand up?
Yes, sir. Greg touched on earlier some participation from out-of-state partners, specifically Alabama. They participated in a training last year where they were in the very similar terrain. They're from southern Alabama, where it's mostly flat. And he mentioned that, but I just wanted to highlight the importance that we saw out west, where they had to overcome similar obstacles just a few months prior. So that training and partnership prior really paid dividends during that incident.
Yeah. Thank you, Charles. Charles was disclosure. Charles was a Nightside Commel in the West, so he's one of the heroes I was talking about. But yeah, so to talk to the other gentleman that said you got to step your training up, that's exactly what Charles is trying to say here. The state of Alabama and the state of North Carolina pair up really nicely together. Similar strategic technology reserve programs, similar rollout of stuff. So Mobile Fire and their comms folks, they said, "Hey, can we come up there and take part in this exercise?" They did, and during this event, we called them. They came. They went to almost the same spot as they did during the exercise. They didn't call us. They didn't have to worry about. They knew exactly where to go, what to do, what to set up, and they rocked it. So, thank you, Charles.
Great value in training.
Did you use EMAC at all?
100%. We used EMAC for just in communications, state of Connecticut, state of Florida. Our friends in Florida sent us a strike team or a task force. They had to return though because of Milton. Alabama, we got telecommunicator emergency response teams from all over the place. Iowa, Nebraska, Ohio, New York, Virginia. And again, I would try Alabama. Again, I would try. Miss somebody, and I'm not on purpose missing anyone. But we also had some spurious deployers that showed up with other teams that were comms components that we never heard from. So duplication of effort. where we had some teams roll in with some awesome capabilities. Never knew they were there. It would be pretty awesome if we did. We could have maybe saved the resource we were mobilizing to get out there. And that is not meant to be disparaging to those folks, because they also did amazing work. That here, we had teams from Virginia, New York, came down with IMT, FDNY. We had a bunch of different, obviously 38, 39 states that came to help us. So, for context, my boss, the director of emergency management, says they want 39 paybacks as soon as possible. So it is my job to scour the United States and find the 39 states that helped us and offer our assistance for their bad days. So that is our mission. We to give as many paybacks as possible. So what else you got, Barry?
It's all in chat.
Awesome. Yeah, there was something about GMRS. I'm not sure. Probably. Yeah.
Wait, when it hits the fan, any radio system that's available should be used.
Yeah.
And we need to work with these people before anything hits the fan, so we're familiar with each other. That's the most important thing.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Okay, JM, please speak up.
Greg, did you guys have any difficulties with intentional interference on any of your systems, whether it was Viper or all the way down to ham stuff at all? And if you did, what'd you do about it?
Sure. Not to my knowledge, Jam. Good question. What we did have was kind of some self-inflicted issues with our state LMR network. So it's a trunked radio system, and to not get way in the weeds, but there's an over reliance, of our public safety friends that on what is easy, what is comfortable. So I think we went from, on a normal tower site of 100, maybe 100 push to talks in a 12-hour period. I think they had over 6,000 in that same period. So it was almost unusable. So people were saying, the network's down and the radio system doesn't work. Well, it works just fine. It's just now we did think of that, right? You're talking about our strategy, especially after we started to figure out what had happened. So maybe 2-3 days in, we started to think security of networks, talking about people showing up, disaster tourism piece of someone showing up to get in the mix. It was basically if you can help, come hang out, right? So there was that. Didn't necessarily anticipate or expect any willful interference, but it was talked about. I didn't experience any. But again, that's a great question. Something you got to consider, especially if this is a no-notice event or a terrorist act. You got to anticipate that's probably going to be a piece of that now. Our adversaries are pretty advanced. So in some cases more advanced than we are. So but anyway, thank you, sir.
Thank you, JM. Anybody else got a question out there? I know we're going long. It's well worth it. Lots of good stuff going on here. As long as Greg doesn't mind staying a little later, I appreciate what he's doing.
I'm good to go. Whatever you guys need.
Okay. Anybody else got?
Ted, do you want to bring up your question? You have your hand up.
Sure. A couple things. First of all, I think the GMRS question I had was, did anybody try and use GMRS to listen for people to government requests for assistance from FRS radios? And then the second is the staging areas and various positions out in the field. Would they have been very much better off if they had Wi-Fi back to the command post net? And then the unknown assets. How did you sort out who of the tourists you could actually deploy and which ones were too dangerous to deploy? And then the last was, did you use NVIS, near vertical incident skywave, to get out of the valleys? Over.
Unknown on the GMRS FRS question. I don't think so, but that's just me. That is a pure speculation on my part. I think they were so task saturated. I don't think they had the time to do that. But that doesn't mean that they weren't. Second question: connectivity from staging areas and other areas. A challenge that was on our list of places to get to. So shelters, points of distribution, i.e., water, food. Those locations, all of them had a need for connectivity, whatever that is, whether it was a commercial partner getting a deployable out there, whether it was a Starlink if we had any, which we didn't, or if it was, if it was, I mean, there were various people, politicians, celebrities, other just flying in boxes, and I mean, social media influencers bringing hundreds of them. Again, I think if we were to put it all together and get the team in one place and to actually tell this story, we could probably tell it. It would probably take from now until Monday to actually do it. So yes, to answer your question, there was a huge need for that, specifically in shelters. Thousands of people needed sheltering, and that was a need. Difference now you have to talk about in your planning process, is that internet for public safety, or is that internet for the people in the shelter?
I
That's a
I was thinking public safety.
Okay, so I was thinking shelter. So if I have a law enforcement officer cruising Facebook next to someone who hasn't had water or food and hadn't talked to their loved ones in 5 days, if I allow that, that's going to create a very challenging environment. So something you need to, for me, as a as the functional lead, is that's something to consider. I'm going to work with our commercial partners to be like, this one's y'all's. Go do your thing. Everyone needs to get it. Give it to them. Issuing gear, that was done. That has to be done by mission order only. So there was gear that, again, various people just brought and gave. They were just giving it out. We had no accountability on any of that. A lot of duplication of effort. But what we did know is we, in Charles and the rest of the team in the West, they would do basically check-ins. It'd be these 6 counties. Either we have someone in that county that we can go right directly with. We've deployed people there, or we're going to cut, or from that local EM coordinator, I have a gap and I need you to fill it with a resource. If we had the resource, we would mission assign it. They would sign it out. It would come with a ticket, and it would go. What they did with them from there, out of our control. So that is on the person that requested it. We basically hand it over to them. They become responsible, and if they lose it, they pay up on it. So, in your last question, what was the last question you had? I'm sorry.
It was well, the unknown assets. I guess you answered the other side of it, but then did you use NVIS, near vertical incident skywave, for short range, but when in a valley type of communication?
Yeah, I'm sure. So they, I think that's what they set up in the West. Yeah, they had a couple different things out there as well. A local Aries group brought out a trailer as well. We had a bunch of gear taken out from the old RCC West, and also some new gear that hadn't been installed yet. So, as far as the tactical teams, I know we had some urban search and rescue teams that were out. They used HF. I don't know if it was NBIS, but so some of the areas out. The picture that you guys saw of I-40 collapsed at the Tennessee line, that was taken by one of our comms specialists on Task Force 8 out of Durham fire. That was pretty cool to see out there. But so, yes, to answer your question.
All right, there's one question you could probably do another whole presentation on. How would you change or reprioritize your exercises with amateur radio operators and OX people as a result of your experience?
That's a great question. So we're currently in the planning process right now for this year's our full scale exercise, and we've had the discussion many times. What are we going to do? How are we going to challenge our OXCOM people? What are we going to do with them? Right, and that's the same with some of our more. It's if when you go into an exercise, and this is kind of some advice. If you go into an exercise thinking that someone is going to give you something to do, you are not going to have fun at that exercise. So you've got to have that good imagination. You've got to have the drive and the motivation to take it upon yourself to try these things that you thought you'd never have to do, right? But to just go and be like and wait for someone to hand you a list of tasks to complete, it's not an exercise. That's a drill. You can do those at your house. So when we get our folks out, um, what do we do different now? We did this last year for the first time, and it was a huge success. We got with the local repeater owners in range and said, "Hey, is it okay if we use the repeater for this exercise?" And they were like, "What's the exercise about?" And then they got interested and they played along, and they were able to help like push that scenario, or at least give us some, some realistic radio traffic to work it in, which was super cool. And then, um, you get that, then you get firefighters or people that don't have their license yet. And they're like, "What's that?" And then you get them interested, and then you get the owner of the repeater talking to a firefighter under, using a license, somebody standing right next to him. Like, all that stuff is huge. It's the little stuff, and it's the attention to detail, especially with Auxcom. Because if you don't, if you don't keep people interested, then people start to talk, then people start to talk smack, and then people start to get discouraged, and then the only thing you have in common amongst your team is something negative, and that's not a good place to start. So hope that helps.
Thank you, Greg.
One comment, it says from Mitchell, we need to train our replacements. How true?
Yeah. Put that one in a book.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So if we don't, so if we came up, I realized that very quickly in my career. Like, I don't want to work every hour of every day, so I don't want to be the one on the hook all the time. So, and secondly is I live in the great city of Durham, North Carolina, but when I get on the highway to go to work every day, it's like driving the Indy 500. You got to be going like 100 miles an hour just to get on the on ramp, right? So I could kick it pretty easily going to work. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm very confident. We're about 20 deep here in North Carolina. So in our what do they call that in the like the president and vice president, what is that called? We've got 20 people, a line of succession, there you go. So we got about 20 deep of succession, including our deputies, deputy SWICs, including our ComCs. And those 20 people, we communicate almost daily, and things and decision points that we make, the three of us, myself, Amanda, and Brandy, we share with that line of succession. So couldn't agree with you more, whoever said that. And yeah, and again, that's why I think, in my opinion, we need to be getting into academia and some of those other places, because what is older is now cool. So we got to capitalize on that. Or maybe
IT, but you said it's not too much that you want to go into with IT. So maybe they can on RATPAC and we can answer those.
Yeah, I'm not the IT guy. Sorry, y'all. I'm IT's problem. How's that?
Being an ex-IT administrator, like that.
Yeah, right? Yes. Yeah, I'm the one. Why can't we do this?
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. Barry, how are we?
One more question, Greg. What is your working title? Someone wants.
So my working title, i.e. the one that's on my paycheck, is Communications Branch Manager with NCEM, North Carolina Emergency Management. My role is I'm the statewide interoperability coordinator. So there is one of me in every state and territory.
All right, that's everything in chat.
Super. Well, great. This has been great. We'll have to get with JM and others to work out some additional things, because I think what goes on over there, what I found years ago, I used to work in my earlier lives, I used to do a lot of travel, and I discovered that the states that have disasters have a lot more activity, a lot more interest, and then the states that don't. And that's not good. A good example is Idaho. We're a blue state. But we got Oregon and Washington and California, all very close neighbors of ours, and they are not that way. We have to be prepared to help them. So anyway, that's just comments on the comments. Anybody else got any comments out there?
Oh, yeah. First, again, thank you very much, Greg. This has been terrific. And I don't think you're IT's worst nightmare. You're just their best customer.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah.
And, Dan, your comment about, when you don't have incidents frequently, that frankly, even though we have had the fires recently, it's still a problem out here in the Southwest because, we don't have the hurricanes and so on. And the other thing is most of our disasters are not predictable. We don't get 3 or 4 days notice. We get either a few seconds notice or a few hours notice at the most. So the need to be ready in a flash is much greater, yet the motivation is hard when we haven't had a major earthquake in decades, and yet they keep saying get ready for it. So
Yeah.
that's a challenge for volunteers.
Yeah. Cheers, Marty. I appreciate that. And that's what we're up against, right? And that's why we have to be planning, like, have, the good Lord willing, the creek don't rise tomorrow morning when I wake up. Like, I have to anticipate something really bad happening tomorrow, and we need to be ready for it. We got to have our plan ready right now. That's why we meet every other Wednesday. We go over, look, this is what's happened in the last week. This is what we think is going to happen in the next week. And if something bad happens, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be the same every single time. We're going to call the same people, do the same things. So right on. I appreciate that statement very, very much.
And let me just give an attaboy to whoever talked about training our replacements, because most of us, or a lot of us, the ones that show up the most tend to be the real senior folks who, whose clock is ticking. And, it's hard to trust somebody that's new and doesn't know a lot of things, but unless you give them some things to work on and some challenges and bring them in, they're never going to. When we first formed our areas group in Los Angeles, there were 1 or 2 people ran the net all the time, and we said, look, if the 2 of us aren't there, what are they going to do? Everybody's going to sit around wondering who's running it. We got to bring people in and let them make mistakes when there's not a life on the line, and get them used to it, and that has really paid dividends.
Hey,
Yeah.
Has had it for a while, and James just got his hand. Dan, go ahead.
Well, so a couple of comments sort of reminded me that all emergencies are local, and we need to be able to go to the next county or next state over to do what we can do to help them, and hope that we've trained enough together so that they'll know what to do when they come visit us in our county or state. That's kind of critical. And the basic value underlying the entirety of the amateur radio service seems to be that it's a in-place, ubiquitously distributed population of communicators with their own communications capability. And keeping, strategically making use of that. I gotta praise the CISA ICTAP Oxcom class, because I think that's what it was aiming at.
Okay, we're wrapping up to almost 2 hours on this, so we need to start wrapping up if we can. Jay, we got your hand up though. I want to get you in there.
So one more thing, Greg. I assume that the state of North Carolina, at their EOC or their RCCs, ever what, has a list of capabilities that they provide, and that you would expect the counties to match that if they want to talk to the state, rather than you trying to match the counties. Would you say that's correct?
That's accurate, with the exception of one thing, and that is the sat phone, MSAT G2. So we have a bunch of different platforms of satellite devices, only because some of the we want to make sure we have one of everything of that. That's our E lane in the PACE plan. But you are exactly right. We want to make sure capability wise we're the same across all of our regional coordination centers. We do have a little work to do. The central branch just got a new building. We're just starting to get that up to speed. But we provide that list to the locals to say, here it is. Here it is. Here's the recommended vendors. Our friends in Guilford County put that together just to say, look, if this is what you're going after, like this is what you want to go get, because it's in other places. And then there's the ability for one operator who knows how to use that gear to go next door, help a friend. It's potentially the same gear. You already know how to use it. You're comfortable with it, so on and so forth. So yeah, good question, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So
Okay, are there any follow-ups here? We appreciate you sticking around like this, Greg.
No worries. Now, and before we go, Barry, go ahead. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Thank you.
So I just want to kind of give a shout out to everybody. I see a bunch of folks from North Carolina. I see that team I was talking about from Connecticut. They're on. Like, I see you guys. I'm so very proud of our team and the Spurious volunteers that jumped on and managed nets of some really horrible stuff. I can't tell you how proud I am of those folks. And we got a good thing going on here. And I'm just kind of happy to share one piece of a super complex story. So appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you. Appreciate what you do. It takes people like you to make all this come together. And they're not dime a dozen. That's so we appreciate you doing what you do and using your skills the way you do. We have a hand up here. Catherine, I think it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon for everyone. This is Matthew Adwong, Catherine's husband. Catherine just sitting next to me. I have a question. We are new to this group here. Thanks for having such a great presentation to tell us what North Carolina experienced. We joined just because we had this big fire in California, so we had a group of people joined in this activity. My question for you is, someone said that in North Carolina, you had to do this work for 28 days. My question is, how do we, as these volunteer groups, communicate with the official group, say the National Guard or whatever? Yeah, isn't they are the one that's supposed to do all this work when it settles down, when the dust settles down?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So that is the crux of my job. That is why we set up these coordination groups, right? So ultimately, I don't want a National Guard group like moving into an area for which there's already established stuff and then making it more difficult, more confusing, right? So the more that I can get, or the more that you can first get that face to face. So if you're working as an amateur radio operator with a group performing a task, right, and you see another group come in, you always want to have that initial interaction, like that face to face. Hi, I'm Greg. I'm here. I'm an amateur radio operator. Like, just whatever you think would help that interoperability. And how you talk to them, that may not be what you want to do. That might make it more complex for you. But that all starts with that discussion. Is it I hand you a radio? Obviously, you have to have a license to operate in amateur bands. But what does that look like? There's so many options. A lot of times, specifically the National Guard, they'll take it to like volume 11, way more complex than it has to be. When you could simply say, I have a volunteer, I'll just have them sit in your command post with you, and if you have a message, I'll pass it, and then you just tell me what you want information to share and I'll share it, rather than try and figure out all the other stuff. So I don't know if that made sense, but I hope it did.
Hey, thank you. So any information is better than nothing, right? So I appreciate it. So
Yeah,
as we continue on this path, then we'll learn more about the organization and the structure, that type of thing. Thank you very much, and appreciate all your inputs.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Atwell.
Hey, anybody else?
Put in chat.
Okay, with that, this has been the longest one that we've had, 2 hours.
Sorry.
It's been good. So appreciate you, Greg, hanging in there. He didn't fall over in the chair. So anyway, 73s, everybody. Say again, everybody.
The high, we had almost 250.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dan, good call getting those extra seats arranged.
Yeah, I bumped our Zoom thing up to have the prepare for the night. We were inspecting it. So anyway, I'm gonna say 73s, everybody.